Right, hello and welcome to Illwinter. It says there, Illwinter. I'm just that's the name. That's the. So I have to introduce the concept. Fruity, you can see Fruity's chat messages there. Fruity came up with this concept. We were just talking about that before I started this transition to this screen. Fruity wanted to do a collaborative writing project. Came up with the location of Illwinter. Oh well, Illfell and Illwinter. And I should explain what those two places are. Initially, I can't remember who said it. I think initially you, Fruity, said it was a lake town, and then eventually there was a document produced between yourself and Keish that said it was a river town. In my mind right now, it's kind of both. I kind of like I've got a picture of a map in my mind that's like the town of Illfell is sat on the river going out of or into a lake or something. I think out of a lake. I have this in my mind that it's out of a lake, because quite near the lake there could be some forestry, and then the river could be I forget what they call it, but there's like they use rivers to float logs downstream to a sawmill. I kind of think there might be a mill somewhere shortly, like a brief ride out of town. I have this picture of a lake in the north east of the image, and of course you based this map on. We have talked to forests. Yeah, I think the document says forests. There's got to be forests. You can't do a horror without a forest, can you? You can. But yeah. So that was the pitch. The pitch was it's a collaborative project. You want to get your friends together to write some stories, some horror stories. They don't have to be horror. The last part of my first story wasn't initially horror. I'll talk about it in a minute. It's a story divided into 3 parts, but each part is a separate story. And I have justification for this. You wanted to do a sort of anthology of horror stories. The pitch was queer and scared. So ideally being, but not necessarily, ideally being spooky, scary kind of horror stories with queer characters, queer themes, that sort of thing. But open to whatever. Like my third story was going to be a love story until I found a sort of horror twist for it. And the town is Illfell. It's a small town. We've sort of narrowed it down to just like it's really rural America somewhere on a lake or river. And at some point in time, a theme park, an amusement park, was opened across the lake or river from Illfell, and that amusement park is called Illwinter. Hence the name there, Illwinter. Obviously my mic's unmuted, Tom. I've been talking to Fruity, so it's definitely unmuted. Yeah. What more of the concept was it? Oh yeah, there's a shady organization, according to the lore doc, the canon document, who run the amusement park Illwinter, and are maybe headquartered inside the park somewhere. Won't necessarily say where, but because I'm not gonna share the canon document. I'm gonna mainly share my story. Yeah. So how did that story come to me? I do have a document open that I'm looking at, and I've written down the words initial ideas here, and there was 2 initially. The first one is not one that I'm working on. The first one, because after you said, is anyone interested in collaborating on this writing project, my thought was I might be busy with humanity, which I want to start writing in November, but I'll consider it. And I came up with this idea. Idea 1, teens breaking into the theme park resort at night to explore the rides, encountering ... something within, parentheses, possibly just a guard, speculating about said entity being a cult member of some, or some kind of beastie, because we have talked about there being cults or there being cryptids and weird beasties in the forest or near the lake, maybe in the lake, in fact. I don't know. So that was my first idea. It sort of comes from, you mentioned an amusement park to me, and my mind goes to like the kind of videos I like to watch on YouTube, which are urban exploration videos. I like Stora's parkour videos. I watch there's a channel Shy, Shiey, and he does train surfing all the time. But I've also seen videos of people who like illegally enter amusement parks and they go and explore them when they're empty. It's quite fun to see that perspective. So that's where my mind initially went. And then, when did I get to the second idea? The second idea is number 2. Founding of the theme park, with the POV character being the owner visiting the small town. That was the second idea. And this is before you gave us access to the lore document, and there was the Discord where we're talking more about it. Came with this idea of just viewing it from like the founding of the place, which is why. Oh no, you know what? For some reason the 70s occurred to me first, and then I had this idea. Why not do the founding? And I know exactly why the 70s came to me, is because I like so much of there's so much classic horror from the 70s. Jaws was 75, I think. I was doing research earlier. I think Jaws is 75. I think the Rocky Horror Picture Show is also 75. I think The Birds was the 60s. I think Psycho was the 60s. I'm not big on many horrors, so I can't list that many. But my mind went to the 70s because of classic 70s horror. And then I thought, well, why not do the sort of the founding of the theme park? At which point I came to you and said, could we found it in the 70s? Could I write the founding of it? Yeah. Let's tab over to this document. If I can find the right screen to go to. So here it is. My initial notes were, Words Month is a month of writing being organized by Fruity and Keish. The setting is a lakeside fishing town with a theme park situated at the opposite side of the lake. Various talk of it being a river or a lake, we don't know. There's talk of a cult or cults, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there's idea 2 there. Founding of the theme park with the POV character being the owner visiting the small town. And then from there, I started to get excited about it and started developing idea 2 a bit more. Is there anything I don't want to show in here? I don't think so. I reorganized my documents earlier, so there shouldn't be. Right, just, yeah, ideas of like possible future sequels. Never mind that though. Yeah, because these don't mention any character details or story details. That's good. So, idea 2, further development. I started thinking of it being a film executive who wants to open this park, because we've talked about it being, well, the document says it's think Disneyland basically. So I thought, okay, well, Walt Disney was a producer, owner of Disney. Why not have this guy be a film producer of horror movies? And then he's opening this horror-themed theme park. Yeah, film exec visits small town for groundbreaking ceremony of the amusement park to be constructed. He and his partner are seemingly followed by a shadowy figure, attracting the gaze. Like, this came to me later, actually. Initially, I was thinking the shadowy figure part. Initially, I was thinking it's just him and his partner visiting the small town, and it's the vibes. The horror comes from the vibes, because they're from big city film producer types. They're visiting small town. Everything's a bit different. Everything's a bit off. It feels weird, and you go into their perspective. I think if I'm ever writing a horror, and like this is true of like all of the story ideas I've come up with, like based on this premise, which are now a few. It gets really deep into the POV of the characters in a way I don't think I've ever done before, but I've never done much writing of like prose. I've done like 10, 15 years ago I wrote a bunch of screenplays because that's what I was studying at the time. And I never wrote much horror. But yeah, I think we go deep POV, and It's about the vibes of the place. And then I came up with the shadowy figure as like something that keeps reoccurring in the story. The shadowy figure keeps appearing. It's like a ticking clock, sort of. You know that's going to be resolved by the end. We're going to sort of find out who that is. They attract the gaze of the people in this skeptical town and are generally made to feel like outsiders. Perhaps they stay at a boutique hotel. This is me thinking like boutique hotel. I was trying to find the word. Like, what would Americans call a bed and breakfast? Turns out they just call it a bed and breakfast. I was thinking it's going to be a single room bed and breakfast. Why a single room? Just because it's such a small town. I don't think they've got like a huge tourism industry, but they do have this like little place that has a guest room, and I've got story and justification for that too. Might talk about those characters. Might not. There's so many characters. I've got so many characters. Yeah. If we continue the story after the unearthing of a corpse, didn't mention the corpse yet, did I? Up here? No, this does not mention the corpse. So that's a surprise all of a sudden in this paragraph. Where do we go? I believe the mysterious figure is the mother and spouse of 2 missing persons. Okay. So that's, oh no, I don't think she is actually, of 2 missing persons. No, changed my mind about that. The story changed dramatically from here. Obviously, there's a big chunk of thinking missing right here, because I developed a full story between this thought and this thought. I just like worked everything out. It's all written down elsewhere. Kind of. That's what we're sort of doing today. Is I'm sort of like doing the plot outline because I do have a ton of characters in mind, and I know how they fit together and what they all do. So yeah, let me exit this Zen mode, and you can see the documents. Let's hide private because we're not supposed to look in there. You can't tell from looking at it what you're not supposed to see, so that's fine. But private contains things that may be sequel ideas. Like, I'm setting this story in 1971. I might have ideas for 1985 as well. Maybe even beyond that. Okay. In fact, you can see I'm mentioning 1985 here. Where do we want to go first? Yeah, okay, so you can see I've divided it into 3 stories, plus this 4th one, 1985, which we're going to ignore. Really, what I've realized is 1971, 1957, and 1972 are 3 acts of the same story. And what I think I'm going to do is, let's just borrow this title here, Welcome to Illfell. I'll create a new a folder. Or, oh, here's something I was doing. Yeah. Some stuff there I don't want to be talking about yet. Let's have Everton Nelson's framework, because I've been doing a bunch of research about like how to write stories, because I've never written prose very much. I did dabble a little bit with prose back in the past, and this is a short story specifically, which is a bit different to writing a longer form thing. But also I think a lot of what I've learned developing this I can apply to longer form things like Humanity. Like this idea of it being 3 separate stories, 71, 57, 72. I think that's something that's going to inform how I approach. I already knew I was doing this for like the later Humanity stories, like getting really specific POVs, because we have to cover like the first book of Humanity, that is the non-prelude one, is going to cover like 6 million years or something like that, right? You can't do that and have the same POV character from the beginning to the end. Nothing survives 6 million years. Okay, some things might survive 6 million years, but a human does not. So we need to switch POV frequently while still having a story, and that's kind of what I'm doing here as well. And I think since I'm doing it for like the later books, I should probably do it for Prelude too. Maybe it's not, reality. And if you've no idea what I'm going on about, I have some other videos on my YouTube channel about Humanity Prelude and developing that. But yeah, maybe it's not reality that I'm telling the story from the perspective of. Maybe there are other inanimate things that I tell the story from, and we go POV for different facets of reality, just to make the pace of that story the same as later ones. Whatever. Anyway, this is a framework that I found someone on YouTube talking about, and then I found a Medium article about, and they had conflicting ideas for like what number 8 and 9 are supposed to be. But they come from Antonia Nelson. Antonia Nelson wrote this 9-step framework for writing short stories. And the steps are: 1, write a story about something that happened to you. Yeah, like I've never opened an amusement park, but I've been in relationships, so I know, and I've visited towns where I felt like weird and like lost. So that it's something. It doesn't mean you specifically write about something mundane in your own life, but draw from experience is like what that first point essentially means. 2, change the point of view. Like that's like, say you're writing about a relationship. Like okay, so something that has happened to me genuinely in my lifespan is my parents got divorced when before I could remember anything. So I've lived with divorced parents. My POV for that would be terrible, but I could write about the experience of being a child whose parents were separated from later in life. But like my POV at the time sucks, but I could get into switching up the POV to their POV, that sort of thing. It's about finding who's got the most interesting perception of the event that you're trying to write about. Create a ticking clock. I think I've done that for all. Well, have I? Yeah, like I was saying, the shadowy figure is sort of a ticking clock for that first story. Create props or objects, like things, tactile things to connect you to the world. Create a transitional situation. Genuinely can't remember what that means. Oh wait, yeah, no, that's they're visiting a small town that's alien to them. It's like it's very classic storytelling. This is from like The Hero with 1,000 Faces, like oh god, yeah, Joseph Campbell's what? It's from The Hero's Journey, you know, the crossing of the threshold into the other world. You start out in the normal world, you go into the other world, the magical world, or the strange world, the alien world, whatever. Just classic storytelling beat that. Add a world event, something to connect it to reality. I'm kind of doing that a lot with... The story's going to contain a lot of media references. I know... Yeah, because my characters are a film producer and actor in the first story anyway, they're going to reference movies that have recently been released. Sorry, I just hit my mic. Story 2 might reference a bunch of music. Story 3 references TV sitcoms. Add binary forces, good and evil, or not good and evil, but you know, this and that, you know, yin and yang. Use physical spaces, follow Freytag's pyramid. This is where it gets into really weird conflict. Freytag's pyramid, though, is just it's a storytelling technique. If we go over to here and type in Freytag's pyramid wiki, we'll find list of story structures. Scroll down. Let's just type it in again. Freytag's pyramid. It's that. It's that. I don't actually think you need to, like, do this to write a story. I think this is how your story is going to come about anyway, because like you intuitively know your story's got a beginning, a middle, and end. You know you want to end on something that resolves the earlier parts of it. So the story's going to naturally find this anyway, and then there are other structures too, and it like these are just analysis things. But I think they're helpful tools. Anyway, I'm getting like sidetracked by this. I'm not even talking about the story yet. And then create repetition and payoff. Like I said, repetition, the shadowy figure shows up again. Embrace experimentation. Just do what you want. I don't know why there's this conflict between these. I haven't actually read... I think Antonia Nelson has this in a book, but I haven't actually read it. Anyway, what I actually said I was going to do was create a new folder. We're going to call it... I'm going to call it 0.welcome to Illfell. I will restructure these after the fact. And inside 0.welcome to Illfell, create a new document. It's going to be the outline. Outline of all 3 stories. Let's make it YAML, so I can So I can kind of do this. Okay, so what are my 3 stories? First one's 1971, I said, didn't I? The second is, because I can't count, 1957. And the third is 1972. And I know the key events in these, like... do we write key events? Well, let's just add a bullet point in each and say, like, the key event in 1971 is it's groundbreaking of Illwinter. Groundbreaking ceremony of Illwinter. That was the, like, initial idea at Illwinter. And because it was groundbreaking, like, it naturally sort of follows from there. You're going to find something, especially in a horror story, you're going to find something. So it ends with the reveal of a corpse. A corpse gets dug up. And then from there, 1957 goes to... Generally can't remember how I got from 1971 to 1957. Like, what order do these stories occur to me in? I think it was this next, because I had this idea that we should explore who that person was that got dug up. Basically, there's a reason, like... Okay. Let me add just a note here. I'm going to say, like, POV, and that's barely readable, isn't it? You're gonna have to deal with that. POV is it's either James Jansen. I've got a character called James Jansen, who is the actor, or Isaac Winters. James Jansen or Isaac Winters. Winters being the producer, who's like partly funded the park. Yeah, and then the POV for this one are detectives. POV detectives. I'm just going to write detectives for now. And the reason I've done this is because I felt like there was such a gap between, like, James Johnson and Isaac Winters visit Illfell, and it feels alien, it feels weird. But then after the groundbreaking ceremony, they leave. They go back to Hollywood or wherever they came from, wherever they produce their movies. Maybe it's more local, maybe it's like Chicago or something, but like their story leaves Illfell and it becomes uninteresting for a year. It becomes uninteresting until 1972. But it didn't feel like, besides the reveal of a corpse, the twist ending at the end of that one, it didn't feel like they had a complete story. They kind of do. They have a sort of unresolved issue by the end of story 1, I think, and then they return in story 3, but they're not POV characters. It's because I don't think their POV is as interesting as this other POV. Or I just really like the characters that I chose for this. There is POV is... It's actually very specific in this case. I know exactly whose POV it is mostly. It's Sarah Bowen. Sarah Bowen is young teenager. Oh, no, by 72 she's actually 17 or 18. It's their senior year. Sarah Bowen, but I am going to add and Nikki Walker because it's their story, and we'll see James again, we'll see Isaac again in that story, and see where they are after a year. But I don't think it's that interesting to like see the rest of their story play out after this. It's certainly not that. There's not that much horror to it, which sounds like, well, that's a you problem, Tom. You failed to write this properly, Tom. Yeah, and that's a good case. But I really like this idea of really tight focal perspectives and like 3 completely different genres, technically. This one's kind of like what people would call, I guess, elevated horror or psychological thriller. Because it's just the horror of the mundane. It's just these 2 metropolitan types visiting a suburban town and it being weird and off in some way. Even the shadowy figure is revealed to not be... Well, okay, they are a threat, but There's nothing mystical going on. There's nothing magical going on. Nothing supernatural. Then this is just a crime story. This is just investigation. Like standard ticking clock. They've got 48 hours to get enough information out of the pup as possible before they've got to. I did a bunch of research into like the law and stuff. They've got to get her in front of a judge within 48 hours and set bail. This is how the American system works, apparently. So yeah, 48 hours to like figure out why she did what she did, what her connection is to the corpse that was found, etc., etc. And I've said her there a couple of times. I think I already revealed that anyway. It's fine. And then 1972 it's literally just a lesbian romance story. That's it. Like Sarah loves Nikki. Nikki doesn't realize this. Nikki's completely oblivious. It was just a love story. There was no horror. But since it concerns the opening of the theme park, which is sort of like... okay, Sarah adores Nikki. I'm also going to add the detail here. They're in their senior year, which is not super relevant, but it is for like a timeline I have in mind. The second plot point, which, yeah, Illwinter opens today, and I think today is October 31st, 1972, which is a weekday, but should be fine. Like, I have this scene in mind of them rushing out of school to hop in the car, drive to the park for its opening. Dead excited about it. All that. Is there a third plot point I need to detail here? Oh yeah, okay. There's a catastrophe. Catastrophe at Illwinter. So the idea sort of is that's how I get to the horror of this story. It's kind of Final Destination type horror. It's curse horror. I think I saw someone refer to Final Destination as being like curse horror. But really, it's this Rube Goldberg machine? That kind of thing, that kind of horror, but not to the same extent. But it's that sort of it's disaster horror is what it is. I think that's a genre. So you've got like cerebral horror, you've got like kind of crime investigation horror, and then you've got whatever I just said, disaster horror. There we go. And these are the three stories. So how do they connect? What's the point? Actually, I'll tell you, like Sarah and Nikki, these two occurred to me first of all, they occurred to me as the brunette and the blonde, right? Because they get pointed out by James Jansen in this story. No, or Isaac, I can't remember. James or Isaac points them out. I think Isaac points them out first, then James comments on them. So originally they were conceived of just like that, and they were just two girls who happened to be in one of the locations that James and Isaac visit in that first story. And then they got more development. They got characters of their own, and then they got their own story. That's how they connect. How do we fit James and Isaac back into this story? Since it's from Sarah and Nikki's POV, we actually see James and Isaac again here and overhear a conversation between them that reveals sort of what happened with their story. And I know that's violating a crucial rule of storytelling. Like, that's telling, not showing. But in this case, the overheard discussion is an argument, so it's kind of got its own action with showing dramatic tension, with showing the tension between these two characters in a way that, if we just showed the way they got there, like at least in my mind how they got there is kind of more mundane than the final discussion between them in this story. And that's why that happened. Basically, it's not that I lose interest in these two after this story, it's that I don't think they could sustain the third story. It's weird that I've done it like this. Genuinely. But okay. Let's go over it, and like, how do these three things connect, and like, what's the story? 71 and 72 I had the most development for until today, and now I've done a bit of work on 57 that fleshes it out a little bit more, though I'm a little bit concerned about it. Like, I don't necessarily know that the characters are going the right direction, but whatever. Okay, so groundbreaking ceremony at Illwinter. Like, we want to that's actually not the first plot point. The first plot point is driving into Illwinter. Driving into Illwinter, we get a discussion between Isaac and James about what? Genuinely, about what? I can't remember what I... Well, they talk a bit about movies. They talk a bit about... Yeah, okay, so a critical point that we need to get across here is that driving into Illwinter, James and Isaac talk about Isaac's Park, talk about Isaac's Park and the partnership. In the partnership Isaac has taken to afford it. There we go. Because he couldn't afford it himself. When Disney opened Disneyland, this is some research I did. Walt Disney, like, borrowed against his own life insurance to do that, and I think also sold a bunch of holiday properties. But you know, he did a lot to finance the first Disneyland. This is decades later. This is Isaac Winters opening Illwinter. And he's made a deal with a shady organization he didn't necessarily want to make a deal with. So that's the drama in that first scene. And every scene needs to advance the action somewhat. So they're going to get to the groundbreaking ceremony. They arrive at the groundbreaking ceremony. I think James has a purpose for being there. He's a famous movie actor, and Isaac's the one who breaks the soil. Groundbreaking ceremony at Illwinter. What do I have in mind for this? Yeah, James... Okay, yeah, while Isaac breaks ground, James notices the mysterious figure, who seems to be watching them, I guess. He seems to be watching them. That's like the second plot point. Reveal of the corpse. No, that happens much later in the story. That's like the end of this particular part. Groundbreaking ceremony at Illwinter. Yeah. And then how do we get from there? Oh, generally don't know. Like, we can skip time. The next scene that I have in mind is them sort of going back to the bed and breakfast, checking into the bed and breakfast. Like, obviously, I think as part of this scene, James will point out to Isaac, hey, did you see that figure? But the figure, having been noticed, you know, disappears. You know, that old horror trope of like, did you see that? No. Maybe it was your imagination, that kind of thing. But okay. 3. They go back, and I think it's at least the next plot point that I have in mind, them checking in to the bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast. Don't know why I've capitalized that, but that's fine. Yeah, so checking into the bed and breakfast. This is the first indication that, like, the town feels a little uncomfortable. We meet the bed and breakfast owners. There's I forgot what their names are, sorry. Actually, I've got a document. Exit Zen mode. Characters to do. Who owns this place? Mary Miller, apparently I decided. Miller, okay. Yeah. So, checking into the bed and breakfast. Meeting the Millers. I know Mrs. Miller seems really lovely, really sweet. Mr. Miller is... Oh, God, yeah, we haven't even, like, described the characters, James and Isaac, yet. We will do. Checking into the bed and breakfast, meeting the Millers. I know Mrs. Miller's like really sweet, really lovely. Mr. Miller is in a wheelchair for no other reason than I was like there are no disabled characters in this story. What if Mr. Miller were in a wheelchair? And then there's justification for that in the fact that like he can no longer access the upstairs comfortably, which is why they've been able to let out the upstairs as a pair of guest rooms, and Mr. and Mrs. Miller have a room downstairs now. So there's that, but that's incidental. That's not driving the action forward. Meeting the Millers. It's weirdly like there's like the vibes are off. The meeting the Millers, seemingly friendly Christian couple, and they've got like a crucifix on the wall, you know, all that Christian paraphernalia that devout American Christians have in their houses. Yeah. After this, there is a bar scene, but I don't know if that's what's next. Visiting bar, or if they see the figure again at this point. Because I think the figure starts following them around a bit. Because the figure we have to get to is concerned. We know visiting the bar, where either Isaac or James, it doesn't really matter, goes to order a drink and has a difficult time doing it because it's a dive bar and they're not familiar with this kind of location. Try to order a Manhattan, I think. Bar maid or bar man is like, we don't got that. We don't do that. It's a little bit of difficulty there, but here's where they see they keep it to their perspective. They see the intimidating barfly. There's another character called Intimidating Barfly. They also witness. They also see. Introduction of Sarah and Nikki. They're introduced in this bar, and it's we get a little bit more detail about like Winters' justification. It does look a bit like writing. Isaac Winters' justification, for wanting to open the park in the first place. He points out this pair of teenage girls and says, this is why I'm opening that park, is for kids like them, so they don't have to hang out in dingy joints like this. Sarah and Nikki, after the scene, don't appear again until the third story. Oh god, there's so much more though. I've got an outline already, don't I? No, that's not it. Plot? Yeah, driving into Illfell to the new site of Illwinter. Groundbreaking ceremony, first sighting a mysterious figure. Checking in / getting comfortable at the boutique hotel, point of conflict. The owner displays a Christian crucifix. Second sighting a mysterious figure. Then sex scene, ? Parking at dive bar, picking up newspaper. Yeah, the newspaper's important, actually. Yeah, so there's the scene parking outside before they go to the bar. Parking outside, dive bar. When I say sex scene, it's not a sex scene. That's not what I have in mind. It cuts to black before you get to the really explicit part. It's just a moment of intimacy between the two characters, and then we go forwards to parking outside dive bar, picking up newspaper. Newspaper being important because it says the newspaper. I'm just gonna put it in parentheses here because they read it inside the bar, but they pick it up here. The newspaper says "stars in town" or something like that, and it specifically highlights Jansen visiting town rather than Winters, which is not going to be the source of a lot of tension between them, but is a minor sore point for Winters. Because really, like the park isn't the whole thing. It's not Jansen's idea. Jansen is just tagging along, sort of. But yeah, they picked that up, visited the bar, and then I had ordering drinks, being watched, by the intimidating barfly. Reading the paper, people watching the barfly, the teens. Leaving the bar, third sighting of mysterious figure. That could come earlier. Let's just do that for now. Back at the boutique hotel, cozy by fire. Yeah, Jensen does head out for a smoke. Jensen is confronted outside by the mysterious figure. A woman distraught tells him to leave what's buried. This happens. Null I've put here because I'm like, is there something between these 2 points? Leaving town the next day, call received on car phone. Unearthing of a corpse at the dig site, mysterious figure attacks. Yeah, okay. So let me just copy this part across to the new outline. And put it in place. Okay, yeah. So they go back to the boutique hotel. Cozy by the fire. Jensen heads out for a smoke and is accosted by the figure outside, who we learn is a woman. She's distraught, tells him to leave what's buried. Null here, he does inform, Jansen informs, okay, so Jansen informs, who? Winters, yeah. Winters of the incident outside. Tells him all the details. That's important for later, because later he does not tell all of the details. In story 2, when we get to the investigators, I do quite like parts of story 2, because it's called 1957. Yeah, well, okay. It is. It's set in 1971, but it's the investigation into the corpse that was uncovered. And the story of 1957 is pieced together from several unreliable narrators. So they tell different versions of events, which I quite like. And one such unreliable narrator, the first one, in fact, is going to be Jansen, questioned at the scene about if this woman has ever spoken to him, and he gives a false account of the night before, which you'll know because you've read story 1. So you immediately know, oh, that's incorrect. And then from there you get more and more false narration throughout the story until the resolution of the second part. Okay. But yeah, that's story 1. That's it. That's how it ends. Well, that's plot. So that's plot 1. What's the story? We have this James and Isaac, a gay metropolitan couple coming to a small town and experiencing some discomfort. But the story really is Isaac's. We're seeing most of this from James's perspective, I think. I mean, we must do, because we go to his perspective here. Isaac doesn't see this happen. James recounts it to Isaac back inside. So, this what's the story? Because the story is the character conflict. It's what happens to them, and it's mainly about Isaac's personal conflict. Isaac being having had to make this deal with a shady company to fund the park, is worried about finances and says, this entire thing needs to go off without a hitch. And at the end of the story, of course, there's a hitch. A hitch does in fact occur. So it's him stressing about that. It's James just like being there, trying to be supportive, trying to like be attentive and interested, and Isaac just more and more seems like distant. And it's sort of, he's clearly distracted, clearly stressed, and then this is the sort of the final tipping point. The twist of the knife at the end of the story, sort of. Okay. And that's how it's a complete story. Genuinely is a complete story, even though it's only act 1 of a larger structure. Because it's, first act intro and the inciting incident having already occurred, that he's opening a park, he's taken this partnership. Then there's the rising action and the climax, which is all about, the stresses of that. And then there is the the resolution or the final catastrophe, if we're going with Freytex's Pyramid. I think Freytex's Pyramid had a catastrophe at the end. Reveal of the corpse. Okay, 1957. Skip for now. Let's get on to 1972. Like I said, Story 1, Story 3 had the most development before today. In fact, I should already have an outline for this as well, right? 1972? Outline and synopsis. Yeah, okay. Does this reveal anything I don't want to show? So the images of a blob mascot. Yeah, okay. Oh no, yeah, okay. This is something I already shared on the Discord. So this story is Sarah Bowen has had a crush on her best friend for years. Nikki Walker is oblivious. She's dated. She's talked obsessively about cute actors, and she's never once noticed that Sarah doesn't share her interest in boys. They are both excited for the opening of the new Illwinter amusement park. Somewhere between the thrills and scares of the park and the fact that Nikki has dressed up like Samantha from Bewitched for the occasion, which case, if you're still there, by the way, is more sexist than Gidget. The first episode of Bewitched, more sexist than the first episode of Gidget was. I watched Bewitched last night, actually. It's just so like, it's so like 50s domestic housewife kind of thing. Like, even though she's the lead character of the show, Samantha, she's the domestic housewife, and you know she is forbidden from using magic, and she's promised to be good about that to her husband, and promised to be, you know, the perfect suburban housewife, and it's just it's terrible. Even for the time, I think it was dated. And I think it does show in like how the rest of the series plays out and how the actual episode plays out, because she doesn't keep by that promise. She does get up to all sorts of magical mischief. So, you know, but the initial premise is just so dated, even for 1960 whatever. Women, even if they have magic powers, can only be perfect little housewives. No other aspirations. Yeah. It's funny though, the jokes all hold up. I do like Bewitched. I was very entertained by that first episode. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so Nikki's dressed up like Samantha from Bewitched for the occasion. Sarah is suddenly compelled to kiss Nikki at some point later in the story. Like, that's not at the start of the story, it's when they're at Illwinter. Her embarrassment abates, and when Nikki realizes that she wants this too, there's more to it than that, blah, blah, blah. Their puppy love romance is interrupted by a catastrophe. A roller coaster catches fire, and there is a poorly managed rush at the park as the park is evacuated. Don't worry, folks. Sarah and Nikki make it out okay. Though the images of a blob mascot thing set alight by the fire may haunt them for a while. And, like, this is why... Initially, like, this part is a very late addition to the story. A roller coaster catches fire. There's a poorly managed rush as it's evacuated. And the reason why it was a very late edition is because I was writing this puppy love teen romance between two girls. Sarah is gay and Nikki is bi. Although Nikki hasn't necessarily realized she's bi because it's the 70s, and even though bi is a thing, they're both like 17, 18. She just sort of thinks, since she likes boys, she sort of thinks, you know, all the other girls like girls to some extent too. They just don't go for it, you know? They're both really naive teenagers at this point. Okay, so Sarah, Nikki, and then what? Yeah, then there's Disaster. Disaster was added late, because here's the thing. For all three of these stories, I want to avoid... And it's a trope that actually gets mentioned in the first one, because Isaac Winters, James Jansen would both be familiar with the trope. The bury your gays trope. It's something I want to avoid for these stories. I also I did want to avoid queer trauma as well, which is sort of the thing that in modern queer storytelling has replaced bury your gays is queer trauma. But that's why I have so many reservations about what I've come up with for story 2. Although I don't think it's too bad. I think it's okay, because no queer characters are harmed in the making of this story. Not really. There's just tension. So it's not necessarily queer trauma, it's queer traumatic tension. But we'll talk about story 2 in a bit. This is the second one I came up with to the fullest extent. You've got popular romance interrupted by catastrophe, blah blah blah, and this was added actually late, after Fruity and yourself, Keish, came up with the cryptids document. The cryptids document, which featured, I need to share this guy. Fruity added to this cryptids document this idea that these could be mascots for the park. Fruity added this monstrosity to the cryptids document, Mr. Blobby, and a beloved, we say beloved, 90s foam mascot character from Noel Edmonds' House Party, who was a sensation on British television from 1993, when I think Blobby was incepted, to 1997, when the last Mr. Blobby theme park closed down, because it did have theme parks. I visited one, I went to one once. It must have been like 96 though, because he had like 3 or 4 theme parks that Noel Edmonds opened. Look at this guy, look at this. The fuck is going on there? That's what we're going for. Hideous. Oh my god, worse, look at him. So yeah, this was... Basically, upon reading the cryptids document, I realized, okay, I can actually use the blob. I can set fire to that hideous thing, as long as there's a disaster at the park, and that's how this part of the story developed. Yeah, I'm guilty of writing queer trauma, as it is a thing a lot of queer... Well, here's the thing, Keish, like, you are queer though, so I think you've got more of an excuse to do it. I want to... No, the thing is though, well, you know, okay, so no. Even though I'm like straight, cis, male, all that, I could and will end up writing queer trauma stories, because they are going to happen in my humanity story. I don't want to leave queer characters out of that, because, you know, it's supposed to deal with like every facet of humanity. Like, even before we get to Homo sapiens, I want there to be queer characters, because like queer isn't just something that Homo sapiens are. There are plenty of other ape species, plenty of other non-ape species that have queer members, have you know, there are gay animals, tons of gay animals. A sensitivity reader check it over would be fantastic. Yes. Anyway, I didn't finish reading your big one. It says, I'm guilty of writing queer trauma, as is a thing a lot of queer folks actually deal with. Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of where story 2 goes. And some of it comes down to whether it's used as a means to just cause undue harm to the character. Trauma does not equal character development, or if it is used as a means of exploring, discussing, and bringing attention to the issue. In my case, it's going to be the second. So we're not, in fact, I'm not actually bringing any harm to either of the queer characters in the second story, but it does concern, it's from the POV of a father to a character who I have notes for this character. Where are they? Private. Yeah. Okay. I hid this away because I was like, I don't know if I want to reveal the character of David Lucas at this point. David Lucas is not the detective. David Lucas is the child of one of the detectives, and this is the document. David Lucas, 14, father Scott Lucas, sister Elizabeth Lucas. You've got gender trans feminine. So even though we're calling her David Lucas here, because she's David Lucas at this point in the story, she's trans feminine, lesbian. Her father mistakes her for being gay, and like the whole plot of the story is the finding of the corpse, and the father sort of seeing a vision of himself being that corpse, if he like is awful and abusive to this child of his. You are saying many words. Yeah, I will run a lot of my story I would love to run the story past you as a queer sensitivity checker. That'd be great. Yeah, and then I have I have extra details about the character here, but we'll talk about that maybe if we talk about 1957. For now, I was looking at 1972. Have the outline here, don't I? Okay, yeah. Oh no, this has changed so much since this. Yeah, okay, I have a very clear picture in my head of how this is supposed to go now, and it's not this. Okay, because I want... Okay, let's just start from scratch then. Sarah adores Nikki, they're in their senior year. We see them rushing. We see them rushing out of school, which is probably thinking of it as a small town. I did some research on this as well. I always have to really dig deep into details. I get really obsessed about specific details of a story. So I was like, will this particular district, will this particular area have both a middle school and a high school? Or are they ever combined in America? And they are, they're combined. So I think probably this area has since it's such a small town, it's maybe got a combined middle high school kind of thing. Don't know what you call that, but it's a thing that exists. Sarah adores Nikki. They're in the senior year. We see them rushing out of school, heading for Sarah's car, because Sarah drives. On the drive to Illwinter, I do know that Nikki changes in the back into, just put that in quotes, Samantha is a character name from a sitcom, changes into Samantha costume, and like Nikki glimpses in rear mirror, that sort of thing. Rear mirror catches her. I have some dialogue for this section as well. I haven't written a word of the story yet besides this outline and just notes in, God, so many notes, clearly. Hide private again. Nikki glimpses in rear mirror. At this point, no. Sarah glimpses in rear mirror. Nikki catches her doing that. Nikki catches her. Sarah passes it off as checking traffic, right? Checking for traffic. This is not the incident that drives her to kiss Nikki at this point in the story. Illwinter does open today, but that's where they're headed, so we don't need to say that. There was a catastrophe at Illwinter later in the story, but we don't need to get to that yet either. Next up, I have... So they drive to Illwinter. Nikki changes in the back into Samantha costume. Sarah glimpses in rear mirror. Nikki catches her. Sarah passes it off as checking for traffic. Yes. Sarah... but this is part of the same scene, but I think Nikki, with leftover ribbon... I'll read that in a second, Kate. With leftover ribbon... does Sarah's hair... like Gidget, which is another sitcom that Sarah loved growing up. Here we go. Load of rural towns have K-12 combined schools. In many cases, it can be two buildings in the same property. Kindergarten to a grade 8 in one building, and then grades 9 to 12 in a different one. But if the town is small enough, they can definitely just be in the same building. Loads of rural towns have K-12 grades combined into a single school. Okay. It's okay. It's brilliant. It's good. It's good stuff. Sarah adores Nikki. They're in their senior year at a K-12 school. I think you said K-12 combined school. Okay. What would they call it? Because K stands for what? Key stage or? No, wait, no, it stands for kindergarten. Kindergarten to 12, right? Kindergarten to grade 12. I know this because of research. I did research. Yeah, okay. K to 12 school. Kindergarten to grade 12 school. Would they call it a K to 12 school like that? Because that's the main thing, is I don't know what to call it. I actually don't know where on my my mental image of Illfell, I don't know where the school is precisely. I have a mental image of the place. It doesn't really matter since they have to drive from there. It could be a bit outside of Illfell, but I don't know. Nikki with leftover ribbon from her Samantha costume. Does Sarah's hair like Gidget, which Sarah used to enjoy as a sitcom? Like, basically, Sarah's a bit more shy, a bit more reserved, a bit more nerdy than Nikki. They're best friends, so anything that any TV reference that Nikki makes is probably something she learned from Sarah. Sarah's the one who introduced her to all of this stuff, and they would have watched Gidget years ago because it was off air from '67. Did rerun a bit, but it only ran one season, so. Bewitched reran a whole ton though, so they would definitely have watched Bewitched, and ran for 8 seasons. Kindergarten to 5th grade would be considered elementary grades for us. 6th to 8th grade would be middle school, junior high, while 9th to 12th would be high school. Oh, so even if they're combined, yeah, they're attending high school, but it's a combined building. I might have to think a bit more about how I describe it, or if there are suggestions for actually what locations Illfell has in the Discord, then I'll go with that. I could also just say high school. Anyway, continuing. So I know they arrive at the place, and then there's this sort of... Is the park already open? Before school gets out, is the park already open, I wonder? Even if they're combined into the same building, your grade would still determine whether you're an elementary student, middle schooler, or a high schooler. Gotcha. Because we have to have 10 million ways to differentiate our students. Yes, you do. You also use the terms college and university, I think, to mean the same thing, roughly? Roughly. Yeah. Yes, you do. Okay. They arrive at Illwinter. That much I know. But I don't know if there's a big opening. So I'm just going to ask that question. Is there a big opening event, or is it already open? I think it's probably already open. I think it's probably been open since the morning or since early afternoon before they arrived. Probably already open. It was probably a slightly more like private affair with adults and press, and then once the kids get out of school at whatever time it would have been, they rush to the place, flock to the place. College is sort of a catch-all, yeah. Incredibly interchangeable. There's no real rule of thumb since it is also regional. So where does this story go next? Like I said, I changed it a lot since this one, right? Right, yeah, I've got this idea that Isaac Winters has sold his controlling stake in Illwinter, and Illwinter Corp is formed, but that's not happening at the start, because we're not... Yeah, originally I had in mind that we would see Isaac back out of town, not even in Illfell, but in an office in some city somewhere, whatever city the new heads of Illwinter Corp are based. We'd have a scene there in which he's selling his controlling stake to that company. But then I completely changed it, and I decided, you know what, each story is going to be more focused. It's going to be from a specific POV. And I've really sort of zoomed in on, for this one, Sarah is the main POV. So we have to see that at some point, the fact that he's sold his controlling stake. But That's going to come later. It's going to come like here. It's going to come just before the catastrophe. Overheard conversation. Because we overhear a conversation between Winters and Jansen. Winters has sold most of his stake in Illwinter. Jansen is... Oh, God. Like, it's about how, like, sort of, like, Winters' and Jansen's relationship, that kind of didn't last this whole thing because Winters was so obsessed with it. So, yeah, Jansen still says it's not enough, something like that. And then there's a moment where Jansen confronts the girls, who are at this point in the story hiding in some like catacombs, kind of. But we'll get to that from the other end of the story. Okay, they arrive at Illwinter, and then we sort of get an introduction to the interior of Illwinter, I guess. But does that drive the action forward? What's the action that needs to be driven forward here? Like in the story. Where's my mouse gone? There it is. Let's see. James Johnson checks back in at the boutique hotel. Oh yeah, I was going to have him... This is why I wanted his POV so much. It's mentioned that he could have checked into the newer, larger hotel open to accommodate workers and tourists. Yeah. Shame that. Scenes of a booming town. Yeah, okay. Okay. The focus of the story might change again, I'm not sure. But this is the story we're telling. And this is the resolution, the ending of like Jansen and Winters' story here, which has, you know, it's Act 1 here, beginning of Act 2 here, Act 2 here, and then this is their climax. This is what happens to them after the fact. We've got this focal character, Sarah, and we're trying to get that. So, they get out of school, yep. Oh, like I said, I've written some dialogue. Don't tell me I look cute, tell me I look hot. This is something that Nikki's supposed to say to Sarah after Nikki gets changed into the Samantha costume. And Nikki says, "You look cute." But Nikki doesn't want to look cute. Nikki wants to look hot. So, also, research that I did do, the word hot has been used to mean sexy since like the late 1800s, I think. I think I googled that and found that to be the case. Because I was concerned about like, would people in the early 70s say this? And I think so. I think they would, particularly teenagers. So they visit a haunted house attraction. Yeah, this is basically all of the plot that I need from this point forward. And this was my first idea for something like that leans into the horror. I'm going to add a null point here, and then I'm going to add this part. Because, yeah. I don't know. I do know that the girls visit a haunted house attraction. That's where they go. And it's like a jump scare, or it's something... There's some scare, there's some moment that elevates Sarah's heart rate, and she kisses... oh my god, they were still called the Shy Girl and the Confident Girl at this point. Okay. Let's change that then. Yeah, I didn't have like character bios for these girls yet. Sarah kisses Nikki, not Shy Girl kisses Confident Girl. Okay, sorry, I said okay. Confident Girl leads the Shy Girl to a more secluded undercroft beneath the castle. Panic kisses, there you go, yeah, it's a panic kiss. But then Nikki realizes, oh, this is a thing? Like, I can like girls? She knew she liked girls, right? But she wasn't sure that that was something that could be acted on, and then, you know, it's fine. You know, she does find her best friend attractive too, so... It's a happy little story, I thought. There are weird happenings in the undercroft that spook the girls, might just be workers in costume, shifting animatronics. Then there's the then there's Jansen and Winters enter. They have an argument, have a discussion, have an argument / discussion. And that's where we learn sort of about the conclusion of their story. It's overheard. Yes, let me just combine these two because they're the same plot point. I've just rewritten it, that's all. Jansen does confront the girls, because he confronts them and he remembers them specifically from where he saw them in the bar back here somewhere. And then tells them to, get lost, go on, get out of here. At which point there's the catastrophe and the evacuation of the park. And yeah. Catastrophe at Illwinter, fire at the park, panic, more panic, more panic, evacuation, that sort of thing. And then in the... Oh my god. Let's just say cast against the embers. Cast against the burning skyline. Nikki and Sarah flee together. Flee together to Sarah's car. Jansen, I had this idea that Jansen drives off drives off with Winters in his rearview mirror, in his rear view. So it's an idea for a kind of like final scene for those two that I had. In his rear view, Winters in the company of the shady business owners, those guys, those terrible people, who I guess aren't in the story anymore. I used to have it that there was a whole character here that is now not in this version of the story. It depends, I guess. It depends if we do go this tight with the POV for this story. That character no longer gets witnessed. So they're just not there. Okay. And that is the sort of the concluding part of these three stories. And it's a Sarah and Nikki story, who, by the way, I loved so much. They're the reason 1985 exists. They're the reason I have sequel ideas. But I'm not going to talk about them. But yeah, 1985 exists as a possible sequel story to this one. And is very exciting. But let's write this one first. 1957. 1957, yeah. So this is the police investigation into the corpse and whose corpse it is. We know that we want to get introduced to the investigators. Introduction to... So I think, yeah, the first character that I need to get introduced to is... And here's where things get a little bit... characters. Okay. What's your name? Yeah, Scott Lucas. Elaine Martins is another possible detective on the story. Well, you need two characters so they can converse, basically. But yeah, okay. Introduction to Scott Lucas. At home was the new idea. Originally, it was just going to pick up immediately from the scene of the Illwinter discovery there. But actually, now we're going completely different direction. We're starting with introduction to Scott Lucas at home. And now here's the thing. Here's where we get into the this potentially going too much in the way of it being a queer trauma story. These are very late developments. I just think they're thematically quite good. Okay, so right, first of all, let me just leave that blank for the time being, because the whole point is we get to the reveal at the end, the reveal of who's... Okay, can't use... Yeah, okay, let's just put it in quotes then. We get to the reveal at the end. Oh no, okay, it gets revealed throughout the story, but the ultimate final reveal, one of the final scene is The final scene is what's her name? I can't remember her name. What's her name too? The perp, the one that did it, the one that goddamn did it. Where is she? Mysterious figure, Amanda Walters. There we go. So Amanda Walters. Amanda Walters is driven home. This is the ending. Amanda Walters is driven home. You know, she's going to have a court date set. She'll eventually have a day in court. But it's expected. She'll receive a light penalty or something like that, right? Reason being the reveal. The reveal that Amanda... Okay, we're starting with the ending, which I think is the right way to do mysteries. You start with the ending and you write the discoveries backwards from there. I'm genuinely not sure if that's the case. I've not done any research into like writing mysteries, but it feels right. So Amanda killed her and importantly abusive husband to protect their son from harm, and their son happens to be intimidating barfly from the first story. Where are you? Joseph Walters. Their son from harm because the husband was threatening to beat. Because the husband was threatening to beat. Blah blah blah. Let's see. Where are you now? Intimidating barfly. Joseph. Yeah. Joseph for being gay / having a boyfriend. He had a there was a boy that he was connected with. It was a... I forget how old they are at this point in the story. Joseph Walters is a he would have been about the same age as in 1957 he would have been about the same age as Nikki and Sarah are in story 1, which would make him about 16, 17. So he's you know, he's got a boyfriend. It's another young man. The father is a dickhead and, you know, a homophobic twat, and he's threatening to beat his son. The mother attacks the father, kills him, hides the evidence, buries him out there, which is why she's trying to stop the uncovery of it these 14 years later. That's... yeah, okay. But that's not the part that I'm terribly worried about. Like, Amanda gets a reasonable ending here. She gets off with like what happened, despite the fact that she does attack a person at the dig site, the person who uncovers the corpse. She hits them with a shovel, but she's acting rashly. She'll be fine, whatever. Okay. The trouble I have is like what I thought could happen here is like the discovery of the homophobe's corpse, right? Could parallel the detective story. The detective, introduction to Scott Lucas at home. He is berating his... okay, I don't exactly know how to refer to... Did I call them David? Where would David be? David Lucas, yeah. Okay. He's berating his trans feminine, but like unknown at this point. Let's write it from Scott's perspective. He's berating his, and since it's Scott's perspective, we'll put it in quotes, his possibly gay son, David. He is berating his possibly gay son, David, about the fact that like David was exploring his sister's room, his sister's clothes, that sort of thing. And this is like, am I writing this right? Like is this a proper like trans experience? Is this proper, particularly not just a trans experience, but like a trans feminine experience, a trans woman's experience adolescence, essentially. Son David, for exploring. And what I want to do with the story is not use his to refer to David in the actual narrative voice. Like, Scott will refer to David as he, him, his. But I think the narrative voice has a sort of knowing energy to it or something like that. And then the narrative voice identifies David as her, she, etc. And my theory for that is it clues the audience, the reader, in that like there's more going on with David than just that. But also, I think it gives the actual text of the story itself like a sort of gender dissonance, gender dysphoria, even. Like the narrative is dysphoric about this character. So even though we're not in David's perspective, we still get David's perspective via the narrative voice. Maybe. For now, I'm writing this from Scott's POV, so for exploring his sister's room/clothes. Okay. And then get that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. There we go. Next plot point. Because yeah, Scott is called to investigate crime scene. To investigate the crime scene at Illwinter. Okay? The crime scene at Illwinter arrives, meets Elaine, Elaine being his partner. Where is Elaine? Like, he's not meeting her for the first time. Elaine Martins, yeah. Elaine Martins is fellow detective on the case. Meets Elaine Martins. They first question. Yeah, they first question. I know they first question James Jansen because we get that that beat from earlier in the story where James has been confronted by this woman. James has relayed the information to Isaac Winters, and then here he's relaying it to the detectives, and he's relaying it inaccurately. So we get introduced to the unreliable narration that this story is going to be like fully steeped in. Especially, I guess, if we do this as well, like if we go for feminine pronouns for David Lucas, then we're saying even Scott's narration is unreliable. And that's genuinely quite good. That's genuinely thematically kind of awesome. Whether or not this is a story, obviously it has to be done delicately, but like thematically, that's kind of cool. So okay, the question James Jansen relays information about previous night inaccurately. And I know they have to at the station. At station, they question the perp who was. By the way, who was the perp? Amanda Walters. They question Amanda Walters, but Amanda is mostly silent, refuses to say anything. Refuses to speak. Good on her, really. You know? Don't speak without an attorney present. They also have to go question... Yeah, to get more information. They're trying to gather information about 1957 here. So there's a second person question. They also go and question who was the intimidating barfly? Joseph Walters. Visit Walters' home and question. Did I just say Joseph Walters? I think I did. Joseph Walters, I think, gives several false accounts. Joseph's first false account, I'm going to put here. Joseph's first false account, which I think describes some other assailant. Like, he's trying to, like, shift blame away from his mum and from himself. He's trying to say, like, something happened to his father, but it was nothing to do with either of them. I was just about to say that is the correct move. Innocent or not, cops ask you questions, your response is lawyer. Yeah, correct. So they visit Walter's home and question Joseph Walters. Joseph's first false account describes some other assailant, which we know, because I've revealed the ending of the story, is not what happened. Obviously this account doesn't add up. It sounds like total fucking bullshit. But so they press him a bit more, I think. And I think we pretty much immediately get Joseph's second account. Taking the blame on himself, like attempting to protect his mother, who we know did it, but yeah. I know as well they go and they question the bar owner as well. Robert Bobby Moore? Good old Robert Bobby Moore. I know nothing about this guy, but he has a full name and everything. So I don't know if there's more in between here. I'm going to add a null, and then I'm going to say they question bar owner, Robert Bobby Moore, about sort of like the events described by Joseph of that night in 1957. Let's put in quotes then, that night. And I guess I don't have as much fleshing out to this story. One of the accounts given, and I think it's Amanda who gives this account, she refuses to speak. I think maybe she refuses to speak until after this, and they come back and say Joseph's admitted to it. So maybe it comes here. They return to Amanda, tell her Joseph has confessed. And then something. Amanda relays a different story. Or maybe not, because this would mean she would have to admit to it to protect him. I don't know. We'll see. But the point I wanted to get to here was Amanda relays a different story. I don't know. I think I had in mind that at some point Amanda says that relays a different story. Amanda says that the father, what's the father's name? I haven't actually written it in this document yet, have I? Where is the corpse? Do I have the corpse in here? Yeah, unearthed corpse. Patrick Walters. She reveals that Patrick Walters didn't like Joseph's, I'm putting quotes here, girlfriend. She is either hiding or denying the fact that actually Joseph had a boyfriend, not a girlfriend. And like the implication is either she's in denial that he did, and that her son's gay, or she's afraid of judgment exterior to their family, like from the cops even. So about that night, And why do we have this here? What does Robert Bobby Moore reveal? Robert reveals that that Joseph was in here with his friend, and then in quotes, that, what did I call them? Miller. Okay. And this was a late idea as well, that Miller kid. So they go to question the B&B owners. About their son, whose name is not in the to-do document, is it? No. Do I have any other Millers in here at all? Oh yeah, I do. Kenneth Kenny Miller. Cool. Who was originally going to be called that, but okay. Question the B&B owners about their son, Kenneth Kenny Miller. And you know what? I think this couple are lovely. Like, we met them in part 1, and they were the source of some unease upon arriving for Isaac Winters and James Jansen. But like, I think they're just a lovely couple. They know their son's gay. He's actually a missing person, this son, but he's not. He just moved away. That's it. After shit went down a long time ago, he moved away. They still write to and call him all the time. And I think the Millers are lovely people, is my thinking. And this is where it sort of starts to fully fall together. So this kind of reveals to Scott Lucas that so it reveals, and we're going to say to Scott Lucas because like this is sort of his revelation, that Joseph and Kenny were let's just say a romantic couple. They were a romantic couple, so they were gay. And this is where we get to the point where like he realizes that corpse in the ground isn't just a corpse in the ground. It's, you know, it's his future if he goes on like this, berating his possibly gay son David. So the skeleton looking back at him, smiling at him, is a metaphor for his own potential to be that same sort of dad. Because I think it's when he's called to investigate the crime scene at Illwinter, he's first interrupted by wife, who I don't think she's got a name yet. Interrupted by wife, who does want him to stop berating Scott. No, not Scott. Sorry, David. Who wants him to stop berating David, and then a phone call. Then a phone call happens. Okay. So I don't know exactly how that scene plays out yet. It'll probably come up in the writing of the story, but yeah. So through the fact that she doesn't want this going on, him to be berating his, from his perspective, possibly gay son, and the fact that like that's what happened here. Like Amanda ultimately killed her abusive husband to protect their son from possibly that exact fate becoming him. He realizes, you know, there's maybe some of Amanda in his own wife. There's maybe some of that corpse in himself, and that's the resolution. So Amanda potentially gets off with a light penalty. We know that because when she did kill her husband, it was an act of defense, and the person on the the worksite that she assailed, she was working from a position of distress, she'll maybe get, I don't know, a fine, community service. They'll maybe waive the time that she would have to serve in prison. Don't know why. Don't know how these things work. I was reading, I think it's like 6 months might be the sentence. Also, it was 14 years ago, the murder. Statute of limitations for Illinois is, I think, 2 years. Because it's so difficult to link somebody to a serious crime after that long, I think. But we need a final scene where Scott, and he's obviously not fully reformed at this point. Like, that's not enough to fully reform the dude. It'd be unrealistic if he was fully reformed following this. But Scott, I think Scott goes at it from a really like stupidly manly kind of way. Like Scott sits David down for a drink. Tells him something like, "Whatever you are, that's okay." Or like, no. Not that line, because that line sounds bullshit. But we're getting at that sentiment. Like, he's clearly uncomfortable with the experiences of this day, and he's trying to slightly reform here. But obviously, he doesn't even know the full story. So yeah, that would be that story. Now to justify it as the middle part of these three. We know James Jansen appears in it, but it doesn't really advance James's and Isaac's plot or the plot of Illwinter at all. It's just a separate middle story. But it does reveal a lot about the corpse, and I think that's my problem. I just can't leave a corpse that gets dug up unexplained. I don't think I can do that. That's why I came up with this concept, and parts of this already existed. Like, I knew Elaine Martins. Originally, she was the POV character. Only recently have I kind of thought, well, maybe it's Scott, and maybe this whole thing's going on instead. I think that's it. That's the outline. That's probably what I'm going to be like using. Like these nulls, I might have to think about what happens there, what connects this event to this event. Might be nothing. Might just jump straight from here to here. Yeah, from Amanda to like going to the bar, because she would say like he used to hang out at the bar and then they would go there, and there's sort of like following breadcrumbs, that sort of thing. I'm going to leave those in position though, because I'm not sure if there are. It feels like there's maybe something more to go in there. But like these are full stories, aren't they? I think. So I don't think there's any... This one, you could argue, is entirely filler. Apart from that it resolves this. Doesn't set up anything else. But I like that idea of like telling a story in 3 separate acts with really focused POVs. And the POVs are like chosen specifically for what we're trying to find out in the story, what we're trying to reveal. Like this one is about like the founding of Illwinter, so it's from James's perspective about Isaac, who's there the entire time with James, and it's about Isaac's taking on that deal to afford it and stressing about money and stuff in here. And then the second one is from the detective's POV, investigating that corpse. Because, like, Isaac, James, they maybe never find out who this was. It doesn't really matter to them. They don't need to investigate that. So you switch POVs. You do the detectives. And we find that out. But that alone isn't a story. That's a plot. That's a narrative. That's It's just a world event. It's not a personal story. It's this that's the personal story. And then finally, Sarah and Nikki, who again were just like based on characters seen like in the bar back here. Who I liked a lot. I liked these characters so much I decided to give them a whole story. Oh no, that's I think I wanted to do the park opening. And I was like, whose perspective is going to be best for the park opening? It's going to be teenagers, isn't it? It's going to be who Isaac said in this story the park was for. I remember mentioning, I think I mentioned that he points them out and says, you know, those girls, that's who this park is for. It's for kids to get them out of places like this. So it makes sense to embrace their perspective when visiting the park for the first time. That's why this story exists. But as I say, I do love these characters so much that they have another story in 1985, which we won't talk about because that's not part of this one, which I think together, 3 perspectives telling one story, really. Quite fond of the idea. Let me know what you think. I think I'm going to wrap up. I spent quite a bit of time just laying out plot details here. What do we think? Do these all have like a beginning, middle, end? Do they have story structure? Beginning. Yep. And then end. It's sort of this, yeah. That's 3 acts of a story there. We get them driving into Illfell and having the experience of being there, it being a little bit spooky, it being a little bit different for them. We have all of the action around Illfell, the unease, that's the rising action of the story, getting ultimately to the story's climax, which is, you know, they're leaving the next day having kind of gotten comfortable with the place, only to then, final twist, reveal of a corpse. So this is I'm just sanity checking the stories at this point. Do they have actual 3-act structures individually as well as sort of together? Introduction to, yeah, that's the introduction, and there's the inciting incident, being called out to the place. So yeah, we'll do that. He arrives, and then the rising action is the investigation itself before the ultimate climax. It's the ultimate climax is sort of like this revelation, and then the final reveal, and then that's the So 3 acts. It's a proper story. Sanity checking it for being a proper story. And then we get introduced to Sarah and Nikki. They go on a drive to Illwinter. What's the inciting incident in this story? I guess it's just the opening of Illwinter, which is already happening. So it's like here, and like all of this is rising action until the kiss. And even that's rising action, and then there's the just kind of wrapping up loose ends. The story, their story kind of ends, comes to the climax there, and then there's just wrapping up of the world at that point. But it's good. Okay. That's me separating them into Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, so that they are, in fact, all beginning, middle, ending stories. That is going to be and like I was going to do character writing as well. I have some documents for, say, Sarah Bowen. This is based on 1972 because she's 17 here. Oh yeah, she drives a 1965 Ford Falcon Futura convertible. Did you know? Shared with brother and dad. Oh right. Oh no, things have changed. Things have changed considerably since then. There is a photographer character who has to be mentioned, but oh yeah, in fact he should be written about in this story. Yeah, in this null part here, in fact, he there's a photographer character who's supposed to bump into them, stops them, photographs Sarah and Nikki. He works for the paper, so he's just there like taking photos of the park opening. But he happens to know them because he was a senior last year, so he was a year above them in school. Yeah, and it's a plot detail. It's a character I forgot to mention in this story. He's also in this one because he's taking photos of the groundbreaking ceremony. Of course, he would still be a senior at this point. He'd still be in school. But I think he can also do photography. I think he has a passion for photography. But he doesn't need to be mentioned because he's not really... Yeah, he's not an important character in the story at all. Okay, fair enough. Done. Let me get back across to this screen. That is my contribution of sort of 3 stories that tie together into one larger narrative. For the... What's it called? Queer and Scared? Was that the name of the group? The name of the anthology product, set in Illwinter, set in the town of Illfell, across from which is Illwinter, the amusement park. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, this has fully distracted me from humanity, and it's because it's got like characters. So I think what I've done here, I need to take back to humanity and be like, okay, so I need to find the characters and how to characterize the characters, even though there are no living organisms even at this part of my humanity story. I need to manage to do that to make it actually exciting. I need to be able to fall in love with inanimate matter in that story, so that I can actually get a person interested in reading that. And if it doesn't work, if Prelude doesn't work, then I'll just skip to, story 1 instead of story 0. But I'm still developing that. My plan is to focus on this first, and then once this is done, fill the other part of my 50,000 word goal with whatever other story I'm working on, which probably is Prelude. Yeah, but I'm dead excited to write this. I have a bit more to do. I don't think I'll do another stream on this one, but I have a bit more to do in terms of like fleshing out the characters. If I have a chat to you about story 2 and it's not sensitive enough, like that story sucks, then I might do another redevelopment of that story. Don't know. We will see. Wrapping up, Tom. Wrapping up. Just wrap up. Because I've been going a bit. Okay. So, in the meantime, thanks for watching. If indeed you did watch, this will be written in November. I don't know when or what we're doing with it all yet. We're still like talking about that. With permission from Fruity and... I've dropped my pen. With permission from Fruity and Keish, I will publish it somewhere when I'm happy with it. But I don't know what the idea is in terms of like sharing everyone else's stories. I do believe I have permission to do that though. I could stick it on my own website. But yeah, we'll see. I keep on saying but and then not ending, so it should just end. Thanks for watching. Ta-ra. Bye now. Have fun. Cut to the screen that I usually put at the end of the thing here. Bye.